Good evening, listeners. It's me, your host, Ramblingramm. I'm here with some more stories to scare, shock, and horrify you. Or possibly, just possibly, let you know what's really out there in the dark. Enjoy, listeners. The Hypnosis Machine, Part 2, by AVBAS Intern. He's in here with me. He's in this very room with me as I type this. Marcus wasn't lying. You can see him just as long as you don't actually look at him. The minute you look, he's gone. I'm sorry if this seems jumbled, but he's distracting, and it's really hard to type when someone is looking over your shoulder. Let me bring you guys up to speed. Thank you for reading my last post. I found all your suggestions helpful. I wish I had followed them. After I typed up the post last week, I decided I needed to do something. But I found myself stuck in a strange situation. Do I go to the police? I didn't really have any proof of any wrongdoing. Just some suspected wrongdoing. And even if it was ethically wrong, was it illegal? Can hypnosis even be illegal? When I stopped and thought about it, I realized I had nothing. I didn't even know what made the Owl People's version of the software any different. But I realized I could find out. There was one way I could discover exactly what was in that thing. The lab runs the VR software on HTC Vive headsets. A few weeks back, the plastic on the side of one of the headsets snapped. And rather than try to fix it, the guys in IT threw the whole thing out. Base stations and all. Well, at least they tried to throw it out. But once something hits the curb, it's fair game, right? And just like that, I became the lucky recipient of one duct-taped Vive headset. They watched the test machines too closely for me to feel comfortable trying the Owl People software in the lab. But I decided I could probably sneak the software out in a flash drive, and try it in the comfort of my own apartment. Then I could see for myself there was anything obviously malicious in there. Thursday, I woke up early and got to work before most of the devs, but not early enough to draw suspicion. While most of the guys were getting their morning coffee and catching up on their emails, I snuck a small flash drive from my pocket and copied the avbas.exe files. I don't think anyone noticed. I thought I was so clever. I've tried the simple standard version of the software several times. Normally, you put on the headset to find yourself in a vast, empty, white expanse. There's a single tree behind you to the right, and large text in front of you that says relax. And behind that is the hypnotist. The hypnotist is this massive white naked statue of a man. He's at least 5 times as big as you, sitting cross-legged about 20 feet away. One of the devs told me that early tests showed that the software worked better when people had a person to attribute the narrator's voice to. Making him a giant but then having him sit relaxed is said to give him a feeling of authority without being imposing. Maybe that's true for most people, but I've always found his image more than a little jarring. I rushed home after work on Thursday, both excited and terrified to try this new version of the software. With shaking hands, I plugged the USB stick into my desktop and loaded it up. I wasn't sure what to expect. I live in a single studio apartment, and in one corner of the room is my bed. On the far side from that is the kitchen and the door. The main area in the middle is perfect as a VR space. I stood there with one hand on the headset, ready to pull it off the second things turned weird. I looked for even the tiniest difference between this version and the standard version I'd used before, but there wasn't one. This, for all intents and purposes, appeared to be the same AVBAS experience that everyone got. This one had the audio script for improving self-confidence. Same narrator, same vast white emptiness, same tree, and same overly large, relaxed text. I was partly relieved and partly confused. Maybe this software had nothing to do with the owl people. Maybe the way that the owl people looked was just the way that college-level stress plays out in some people. I didn't know what I had even expected to find. Some voice chanting, "Kill, kill, kill," or something. The more I thought about it, the more ridiculous the idea felt. It still didn't explain what was happening to the owl people, though. When I went into work on Friday, I realized my network credentials no longer worked. There's a strange shrinking panic you get around the third time you try entering your credentials, and you realize that you aren't doing it wrong. You've been intentionally locked out. I felt a hand grab my shoulder. I turned around to see my boss staring at me with a look that told me all I needed to know. He told me I'd been caught on security camera, suspiciously pulling a flash drive out of my pocket and stealing information off one of the lab's test machines. My brain had been so preoccupied with trying to get to the bottom of AVBAS mystery that I had completely forgotten that there were confidential medical records stored on those machines. I tried to explain that I was just taking a version of the software to use at home. I tried to act like I really loved the software and just wanted a copy in hopes of getting a lesser punishment. But they said they had no proof I hadn't copied down confidential information. They were letting me go. Breathe in, breathe out, 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 breathe in, breathe out. Everything was falling apart around me. I lost my internship. My friend clearly wasn't doing well, and my one attempt at unravelling it had proven fruitless. I got to thinking that maybe the problem wasn't the hypnosis machine. Maybe something else was going on with Marcus. I didn't have to be at work anymore, and I really needed a friend, so I hit him up. The texts to see if he wanted to hang out were returned by a half-hearted, "Yeah, I guess you can come over here." When I got to his place, I looked around and realized his apartment was cleaner than I had ever seen it before. Like, spotless. This wasn't like Marcus at all. He didn't clean. He sat around all day in sweatpants watching cartoons and smoking weed. As nice as Marcus's apartment looked, though, it was still obvious that he wasn't doing well. On top of the usual sunken under-eye bags and bloodshot eyes, his face had taken on a strange puffiness. I caught a glint of clear marks running from both his tear ducts, as though I'd just walked in on him crying. His voice even took on the subtle vocal fry of someone trying to conceal his emotions. I asked him if everything was alright, and like always, he dismissed my remarks, claiming he had no idea what I was talking about. Talking to Marcus in this state was harder than I had imagined it. Every topic I brought up he ended as quickly as he could. He acted like someone who was late for another appointment and needed me to hurry up and leave so he could get going. I asked if he'd like to smoke. He said he'd rather not. I asked if he wanted to play some Xbox. He said he'd rather not. We watched TV for a few hours, and then I decided that maybe I should leave. Marcus jumped to help me out the door. As I was leaving, I thanked him for hanging out. "Hey, thanks, man. I know we haven't seen much of each other lately. We should hang out more." Marcus shook his head in agreement, but you could tell by the look on his face that he didn't really care. He continued to move me toward the door. "Hey, by the way, man, I've been meaning to show you, but I got one of those VR headsets from work. You should come on over sometime and we'll—" "Do you have that hypnosis stuff?" he interrupted. I didn't know how to answer this. Actually, yeah, I do. But I've also got some really cool games that you should try." "Yeah, I'm sure we could play those too, but first I'd really love to try the Hypnosis software someplace outside of the lab. It's been driving me crazy. I think there's something in there, something I haven't been able to put my finger on. I think it's in the room with all the numbers, but I've never had a chance to just explore without the doctor breathing down my neck." The hairs on my arms stood up. "What are you talking about? What numbers room?" "You know, the one with all the numbers everywhere. The one without the spirals or the giants. Every time I go in, it's a different room, but there's something going on in the numbers room. I just feel it. I mean, if you're free right now, I'd love to just—" "Actually, I can't right now," I lied. "I really need to figure out what I'm going to do about this internship thing." I quickly excused myself and headed home. I assured Marcus that I'd let him poke around in the software soon. But even as I was saying the words, I realized I was probably lying to him. What other rooms was he talking about? In all the time I've been testing the software, there's only been one environment. As soon as I got home, I booted AVBAS again to see if there was something I missed. I found myself in the same vast empty whiteness, the same tree as always, the same text, the same No, wait. The hypnotist had moved. Instead of the usual sitting pose, he was crouched down on his hands and knees, with one arm outstretched toward me. From his hand he dangled a massive pocket watch, a few feet away from my face. The watch began to swing back and forth as the narrator read off his script in a booming, echoey voice. This room and script were different from the other one, but it didn't feel sinister, more like an extension of what I had already seen. Maybe this version of the software contained improvements that hadn't made it to the other test subjects. I wish I could tell you more about what happened next in this new hypnosis experience, but here's the thing. I can't. I don't remember it. I know I didn't fall asleep or anything. I just can't really remember what happened. 1 second the giant watch is floating back and forth in front of me, and this voice keeps commanding me to breathe in, breathe out. And the next second there's a message floating out in space instructing me to take the headset off. Freaked out, I ripped the headset off, partially tearing the duct tape. I'd lost track of time and had no idea how long I had been inside. I put everything away and decided never to run that software ever again. Exhausted and shaken up, I called it a night. Saturday, I woke up early and went to the nearby coffee shop to sit at my laptop and work on job applications. I needed to deal with the AVBAS issue, but I also needed to be able to make rent, and job applications just felt like a more real issue at the time. As I sat there fixing up my resume and looking through job postings, I kept noticing people walking past me. I know that's not unusual at a cafe, but I could swear that out of the corner of my eye, they all had the same distinctive white porcelain skin as the narrator. They wore the same blank expression with the same 100-yard stare. They were all staring at me. My eyes darted around the room to catch their gaze, but couldn't seem to find them. Every click of the keyboard grew louder and louder. I could feel their stares. The sounds of the rest of the shop faded into the background. I grew so preoccupied with being the focus of their attention that my mind had wandered from the task at hand. I looked down to realize that instead of typing out my credential, someone had written the words, "Breathe in, breathe out," like 100 times across my page. Was it me? Had I done that without realizing it? I slammed my laptop closed and got the hell out of the coffee shop. Even as I ran home, it was still happening. Anyone I could focus my eyes on looked fine, but everyone in my peripheral vision, everyone was him. They were all him. Pure white statues all staring at me. As I entered my apartment, I slammed the door closed and locked it. I closed the blinds and shut off everything. But alone in the complete silence of my apartment, I could tell he was there, watching me. When I looked at the kitchen, he watched me from my bed. When I stared at my bed, he watched me from the kitchen. The knowledge that this might just all be in my head didn't make it any less real. I thought that if I could get some sleep, then maybe, just maybe, he'd be gone when I woke up. As I lay there in bed, I could feel breath on my face. I knew that if I opened my eyes, he'd be there. I laid there for what felt like an eternity, and then I fell asleep, I guess. I must have, because the next thing I knew I was waking up. Slowly, I opened my eyes, only to realize I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was in some dark, vast emptiness. As my eyes began to focus, I could just barely make out some text floating out in front of me. It is now safe to remove the headset. I reached my hands up to the cold, hard plastic of the Vive strapped to my face. Sheer terror gripped me as my brain tried to make sense of my situation. I'd woken up standing in my living room wearing that damn headset. Did I do this? Had I turned it on in my sleep? How could I have loaded this up and strapped myself in without waking up? That all happened just a couple of hours ago, but according to my phone, today is Wednesday. I lay down on Saturday around noon. I'm missing 4 whole days. I'm sick to my stomach. I don't know what's happening to me. The narrator is still here. He watched over my shoulder as I wrote this whole thing. I don't know what to do. I just saw my reflection in the mirror in the bathroom. There are 2 large sunken rings under my eyes. I'm writing this here in case anything happens to me. I'm scared. Have you ever been in a situation where you can't even trust your own mind? You can barely even breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. I can't get my thoughts together. I can't think straight, and that damn knocking on my front door isn't helping. I snuck a peek through the peephole earlier. It's Marcus and the other owl people. I thought if I didn't open the door that maybe they would go away, but it isn't working. His knuckles must be so raw by now. I guess I should go let them in. If today is in fact Wednesday, then God only knows how long they've been out there. Well, listeners, I sincerely hope you enjoyed the tales that I've brought you this evening. It would be a great pleasure to me if you would like, comment, and subscribe, if you're not already a subscriber. And please wait for me to bring you more tales, to alter your perception of how the world may really be. This is Ramblingramm, signing off. Good night, listeners, and sweet dreams.